Working Backwards: Insights, Stories, and Secrets from Inside Amazon, by Colin Breyer and Bill Carr. Introduction. Imagine it's mid-October 2004. You're a senior executive at Amazon. The company is doing well, but growth is slowing down. You're heading into the busiest, most chaotic time of the year, the holiday season. And then, an email from the CEO, Jeff Bezos, lands in your inbox. It's short, and it sets your world on fire. It says something like this: "We should not be satisfied with our growth. This is a house on fire issue. We need a shipping membership program. Let's build and launch it by the end of the year." 11 weeks. To invent, build, and launch a program that would fundamentally change the company, right in the middle of the holiday rush. Most people would call that crazy. A pet project. A classic top-down fire drill. But this wasn't just a whim. It was the culmination of months of intense debate, data analysis, and a relentless focus on a single question: what do our customers truly want? That house on fire email led to the creation of Amazon Prime, a service that would not only save the company's growth trajectory but redefine e-commerce for the entire world. How does a company make a bet that big, that fast? How does it move from a small online bookstore to a global powerhouse that builds everything from cloud computing services to award-winning movies? It's not magic. It's a system. A set of repeatable, scalable principles and practices that form the company's very DNA. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that system. We're diving into the book Working Backwards, written by two longtime Amazon insiders, Colin Breyer and Bill Carr. These aren't journalists looking from the outside in. These are men who were in the room where it happened. Colin was Jeff Bezos' shadow, his chief of staff, for two of the most pivotal years in the company's history. Bill was a vice president who launched and managed Prime Video and Amazon Music. They helped build the very machine they are now explaining. This book isn't just a collection of stories. It's an operating manual for a machine that is designed for one purpose: constant invention. And my promise to you is this: by the end of our time together, you won't just know the secrets behind Amazon's success. You will have a blueprint, a set of practical, powerful tools that you can use, starting tomorrow, to think more clearly, build more effectively, and lead with a new level of purpose, no matter what you're trying to create in this world. Book summary. To understand how Amazon works, you first have to understand the philosophy that powers everything. It's a simple, almost shockingly straightforward idea that Jeff Bezos articulated early on. He said, "We have an unshakable conviction that the long-term interests of shareowners are perfectly aligned with the interests of customers." Now, that might sound like something you'd see on a corporate motivational poster. But at Amazon, it's a law of physics. It means that instead of obsessing over what competitors are doing, or how to squeeze out a little more profit next quarter, you obsess over the customer. You start with their needs, their problems, their desires, and you work backwards from there. And you do it with a time horizon that most companies would find terrifyingly long. You plant seeds, knowing that some may take 5, 7, or even 10 years to grow into mighty oaks. But a philosophy is just a set of nice words unless you have a way to make it real, to bake it into the daily actions of hundreds of thousands of people. This is where most companies fail. They have good intentions. They say, "We must try harder," or "Let's be more innovative." The authors of Working Backwards tell us something profound they learned at Amazon: good intentions don't work. Mechanisms do. A mechanism is a repeatable process that turns good intentions into reality. It's a system that reinforces the culture, even when the CEO isn't in the room. Over 2 decades, Amazon built a set of powerful, interconnected mechanisms that form its unique operating system. And the foundation of that entire system is a set of 14 leadership principles. These aren't vague corporate values. They are a living, breathing constitution. They are specific, actionable, and woven into every significant process at the company, from the first job interview to the most important strategic decisions. You don't have to memorize them at Amazon, because you live them every day. For example, one principle is customer obsession. Leaders start with the customer and work backwards. Another is invent and simplify, which accepts that we may be misunderstood for long periods of time. There's bias for action, which states that speed matters in business and that many decisions are reversible, like walking through a two-way door. And then there's one that sounds deceptively simple: dive deep. It says, leaders operate at all levels, stay connected to the details. No task is beneath them. This isn't just about micromanaging. It's about seeking the truth. The book tells a fantastic story about this principle in action. Jeff Bezos was doing his required 2-day stint in customer service. Yes, even the CEO had to do it. He was listening in on a call where a customer complained that her lawn furniture had arrived damaged. The customer service agent muted the call and said to Jeff, "I bet I know what product she's talking about," and pulled up a specific lawn chair on the website. She was right. It turned out this was happening all the time because of bad packaging, but she had no way to stop it. All she could do was apologize and ship a new one. Jeff, having just learned about Toyota's manufacturing system, had an idea. On the Toyota assembly line, any worker who spots a defect can pull a cord, the on-dock cord, that stops the entire line. The problem is swarmed and fixed before it can travel downstream. Jeff said, "We need an on-dock cord for customer service." And so they built one. A virtual button that allowed any customer service agent to immediately pull a product from the website if they detected a recurring problem. That is dive deep in action. It's finding a single anecdote, a single customer problem, and building a scalable mechanism to solve it forever. These principles give everyone a shared language and a framework for making decisions. But how do you make sure you're hiring people who will actually live by them? This brings us to the first great mechanism, the hiring process, known as the bar raiser program. In the early days, Amazon was growing so fast that, as one employee put it, we had new people hiring new people hiring new people. The risk was enormous. When you're desperate to fill a role, you fall prey to urgency bias, the tendency to overlook a candidate's flaws just to get a warm body in the seat. This is how a company's talent pool gets diluted over time. The bar raiser process was designed to prevent this. For every single interview loop, a special person is assigned as the bar raiser. This is a trained, objective interviewer who is not the hiring manager and is not on the team with the open role. Their sole purpose is to be the guardian of the hiring standard. The name itself is a mandate. Every new hire should raise the bar, making the company stronger than it was before they arrived. The bar raiser has a superpower, the veto. They can single-handedly block any hire, even if the hiring manager is desperate to make the offer. Now, this sounds confrontational, but in practice, the veto is almost never used. Why? Because the bar raiser's real job is to facilitate the decision-making process. They lead the debrief meeting after the interviews, where everyone discusses the candidate. They use the Socratic method, asking probing questions to make sure the decision is based on data, not gut feelings or personal bias. They force the team to map the candidate's past behavior to the 14 leadership principles. This process is rigorous. It's slow. And in the beginning, many managers hated it. It felt like a roadblock. But they soon learned that a bad hire is infinitely more expensive than an empty seat. The bar raiser program is a mechanism that forces long-term thinking into a process that is naturally biased toward short-term relief. It ensures that even during periods of explosive growth, the company gets better, not just bigger. Okay, so you've hired a team of brilliant, principle-driven people. Now, how do you organize them to get things done without getting bogged down in bureaucracy? This was the next great challenge Amazon faced. As the company grew, they noticed a terrifying trend. They were spending more time coordinating and less time building. The number of lines of communication between people grows exponentially as a team gets bigger. Every connection point, every dependency on another team, creates drag. The book tells the story of Amazon's early software architecture. It was a single, massive block of code nicknamed Obidos. To make any change, a developer had to coordinate with countless other teams, because one mistake could bring the entire website down. To get a change approved in the central database, you had to go before a powerful group of senior executives known as the DB Cabal. The process was slow, frustrating, and disempowering. The first attempt to solve this was the now famous two-pizza team concept. The idea was to break down large organizations into small, autonomous teams, no larger than what you could feed with 2 pizzas. Each team would own a piece of the business, have its own goals, and be free to innovate without asking for permission. It was a brilliant idea, but it had its flaws. It turned out to be incredibly difficult to find leaders who had deep expertise in every discipline: tech, business, finance, needed to run a fully autonomous team. And the idea of a single fitness function, a single number to measure a team's performance, was too simplistic and often hid the real story in the data. So the concept evolved into something more powerful and flexible: the single-threaded leader. A single-threaded leader is a person who is 100% dedicated to a single major initiative. Their success is judged by the success of that one thing, and nothing else. They are given a separable, autonomous team to get the job done. As Dave Limp, Amazon's head of devices, famously said, "The best way to fail at inventing something is by making it somebody's part-time job." The book gives the perfect example with the creation of Fulfillment by Amazon, or FBA, the service that lets third-party merchants use Amazon's warehouses and shipping. For over a year, the idea was stuck. It was a good idea, but it was just one of many priorities for several different teams. It was everyone's part-time job. Finally, a senior leader, Jeff Wilke, asked a vice president named Tom Taylor to drop all of his other responsibilities and gave him a team to focus on nothing but this one project. Only then did it take off and become the massive success it is today. Tom Taylor was one of the first single-threaded leaders. This organizational structure is the secret to Amazon's speed and its ability to enter so many different businesses. You don't have one person in charge of all software and another in charge of all hardware. You have a single-threaded leader for Alexa, a single-threaded leader for Kindle, and a single-threaded leader for a new grocery store concept. It minimizes dependencies and maximizes ownership and velocity. Now we have the right people and the right team structure. But how do these teams communicate their ideas effectively, especially to senior leadership? This brings us to the next mechanism, one that is perhaps the most peculiar to outsiders: the ban on PowerPoint. Colin Breyer tells the story of being on a flight with Jeff Bezos in early 2004. They were discussing how frustrating and inefficient their senior leadership meetings had become. Someone would present a complex idea using a PowerPoint deck, with sparse bullet points and slick graphics. The executives in the room, eager to get to the heart of the matter, would interrupt with questions, derailing the presentation. The quality of the decision often depended more on the presenter's public speaking skills than on the quality of the idea itself. On that flight, they read an essay by a Yale professor named Edward Tufte called The Cognitive Style of PowerPoint. Tufte argued that for complex, evidence-based analysis, bullet points are terrible. They flatten out any sense of relative importance and hide the interconnectedness of ideas. The solution? A simple, radical executive order. A few days later, on June 9, 2004, an email went out to the senior team with the subject line, "No PowerPoint presentations from now on." From that day forward, Any idea presented at a senior meeting had to be in the form of a 6-page, narratively structured memo. A 6-pager. The reaction was near universal panic. People who had spent their careers mastering the art of the slide deck now had to learn how to write. But Jeff's reasoning was profound. He explained that the narrative structure of a good memo forces better thought and better understanding of what's more important than what and how things are related. You can't just gloss over ideas in a well-written document. The process that evolved is what new Amazon employees find so strange. A meeting starts, greetings are exchanged, and then the room goes completely silent for 20 to 30 minutes. Everyone sits and reads the 6-page document. They take notes. They underline sentences. They formulate questions. Only after everyone has finished reading does the discussion begin. This mechanism levels the playing field. It doesn't matter if you're a charismatic presenter or a shy introvert. The ideas on the page are what matter. It forces the writer to truly think through their proposal, anticipate questions, and address counterarguments. And it forces the readers to engage with the material deeply before forming an opinion. The result is a higher quality discussion and, ultimately, better decisions. The 6-pager isn't just a document, it's a mechanism for forcing clarity of thought. This brings us to the pinnacle of Amazon's invention process, the mechanism that gives this book its title, Working Backwards. This process is most often used for developing new products and is a direct application of the customer obsession principle. Most companies operate skills forward. They ask, what are we good at? What can we build with our existing skills and assets? Amazon asks a different question. What does the customer need or want? What would be the ideal customer experience? Then, they work backwards from that ideal, even if it requires them to learn entirely new skills or build completely new capabilities. The tool they use for this is a special kind of narrative document, the PR/FAQ. That stands for Press Release and Frequently Asked Questions. Before a single line of code is written, before any hardware is designed, the team responsible for a new idea must write a press release. This isn't a technical document. It's a 1-page, public-facing announcement, written as if the product has just launched. It describes, in simple, customer-friendly language, what the product is, what problem it solves, and why it's so compelling that a customer would leap out of their chair to buy it. If you can't write a compelling press release, it's a sign that the idea isn't good enough. It's a mechanism for ensuring the customer benefit is clear and powerful from day one. Following the press release is the FAQ section. This is where the hard thinking happens. The FAQs are divided into 2 types. First, there are the external FAQs, the questions a customer or a journalist might ask. How much does it cost? How does it work? Is it compatible with my other devices? Then there are the internal FAQs. These are the tough, soul-searching questions that the team and the company's leaders will ask. How big is the market for this? What are the per-unit economics? What are the biggest technical hurdles we need to overcome? What are our dependencies on third parties, and how will we manage them? Writing the PR/FAQ is an intense, iterative process. A team might write 10 or more drafts, meeting with senior leaders multiple times to debate and refine the idea. The document forces you to resolve the hardest issues up front, on paper, where the cost of being wrong is low. It's far cheaper to edit a Word document than it is to recall a million physical devices. This process is the secret behind nearly every major Amazon invention since 2004, from Kindle to Alexa to AWS. Let's look at how it played out with Kindle. In 2004, the ebook market was tiny. The experience was terrible. You had to read on a backlit PC screen, and the books were often more expensive than the print editions. The Amazon team started by asking what the ideal reading experience would be. They worked backwards from the customer. The device should get out of the way, allowing the reader to become completely immersed in the book, just like with a physical copy. This vision led to a series of incredibly difficult decisions that a skills-forward company would never have made. First, Amazon was an e-commerce company, not a hardware company. They knew nothing about building devices. But to control the end-to-end experience, they realized they had to build their own. Outsourcing it would mean ceding control of the most important part of the customer's journey. So, they decided to learn a new skill. The PR/FAQ process forced them to solve other hard problems. How do you make the screen easy on the eyes? They chose the new, unproven e-ink technology, even though it was only black and white and had a slow page turn. Why? Because it mimicked paper and was readable in direct sunlight? It served the reader. How do you make getting books easy? They rejected the standard model of sideloading from a computer. They wanted the device to be constantly connected. This led to the creation of WhisperNet, a free 3G connection built into the device, allowing a customer to buy and download a book in under 60 seconds. This had never been done before and was incredibly controversial and expensive. But it was the right thing for the customer. Finally, the price. To make ebooks compelling, they priced bestsellers at $9.99, a price so low that Amazon actually lost money on each one sold in the beginning. It was a huge, long-term bet that a great experience and low prices would create a massive new market. And it worked. The Kindle sold out in less than 6 hours on its first day and went on to change the publishing industry forever. The story of AWS, or Amazon Web Services, is perhaps the most stunning example of Amazon's invention machine at work. It shows how the company could use its principles to create a massive, industry-defining business that had, on the surface, absolutely nothing to do with its core retail business. The seed of the idea came from the Amazon Associates program, which allowed third-party websites to link to Amazon products and earn a fee. In 2002, Colin Breyer's team launched an experimental feature. Instead of just giving affiliates pre-formatted links, they gave them the raw product data in a format called XML. This allowed developers to build their own custom shopping experiences using Amazon's data. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Developers started creating applications the team had never imagined. It was a light bulb moment. They realized they had stumbled upon a whole new class of customer, the software developer. Around the same time, Amazon was deep in the process of breaking apart its monolithic Obidos software architecture into smaller, independent services. They were getting really good at building and running scalable, reliable infrastructure services like storage, databases, and computing power. It was, as one leader put it, undifferentiated heavy lifting, the hard, foundational work that every internet company had to do, but that didn't differentiate their product in the eyes of their customers. The team, now led by Andy Jassy, put these two ideas together. What if they took the infrastructure services they had built for themselves and offered them to the world, allowing any developer, even a student in a dorm room, to have access to the same world-class computing infrastructure as Amazon? They used the working backwards process to define the products. They wrote PR/FAQs for services like S3, the Simple Storage Service, and EC2, the Elastic Compute Cloud. The process forced them to solve incredibly hard problems. For example, the initial pricing idea for S3 was a simple, tiered monthly subscription. But through the intense debate of the PR/FAQ process, they realized they couldn't possibly predict all the ways developers would use the service. A subscription model would be simple, but it wouldn't align with their costs. So they invented a new model, pay-as-you-go, utility-style pricing. You pay only for what you use, down to the byte of storage and the bit of data transfer. This was revolutionary. It completely changed the economics of starting a technology company. Before AWS, if you had a new idea for a website or an app, you had to go out and buy expensive servers, rent space in a data center, and hire a team to manage it all. It was a huge, upfront capital investment. With AWS, you could start with just a credit card and scale your infrastructure as your business grew. It democratized entrepreneurship and unleashed a wave of innovation that created companies like Airbnb, Slack, and Netflix's streaming service. The established tech giants, Microsoft, Google, IBM, all had the technology and the capital to do this. But they were looking at the world through a skills-forward lens. They were focused on selling software licenses and enterprise hardware. Amazon, by starting with the customer, the developer, and working backwards, saw a need that no one else was addressing. They were willing to be misunderstood for years, to build a business that looked nothing like their core retail operation, because they had conviction that it was the right thing for a new and important customer. And in doing so, they didn't just create a new product, they created an entirely new industry. Commentary. So what can we take away from all of this? When you look at the stories of Kindle, Prime, and AWS, it becomes clear that Amazon's success isn't about having a once-in-a-generation genius like Jeff Bezos, though that certainly helps. It's about building a culture and a set of systems that allow great ideas to emerge, to be tested rigorously, and to be executed with relentless focus. It's a machine for turning customer obsession into invention. The most powerful lesson, for me, is the idea of mechanisms over good intentions. It's such a simple, yet profound shift in thinking. It's not enough to want to be customer-focused. You have to build a process, like the PR/FAQ, that forces you to start with the customer every single time. It's not enough to want to hire the best people. You have to build a mechanism, like the bar raiser program, that guards the hiring bar against the natural pressures of urgency and bias. These practices force you to slow down to go fast. The 6-pager requires deep thought up front, but it leads to a much faster, higher quality discussion. The PR/FAQ feels like a lot of work before you can start building, but it saves you from wasting years building the wrong thing. In a world that prizes speed above all else, Amazon has shown that the fastest way to get to the right answer is to be incredibly deliberate and methodical in how you ask the question. This way of thinking requires a different kind of courage. It requires the courage to be misunderstood for long periods of time. It requires the patience to invest in ideas that might not pay off for a decade. And it requires the humility to admit when you're wrong and to learn from your failures. The book mentions the Amazon Fire Phone, a massive, expensive flop. But the lessons learned from that failure in hardware and software integration were directly applied to the creation of another device, the Amazon Echo, which became a runaway success. Failure isn't the opposite of success. At Amazon, it's a necessary step on the path to it. So, how can you start being a little more Amazonian, wherever you are? You don't have to transform your entire organization overnight. You can start small. First, the next time you have a new idea, try writing a press release for it. Just 1 page. Before you do anything else, force yourself to articulate the customer benefit so clearly that it's instantly compelling. This single exercise can bring more clarity than weeks of meetings. Second, in your next team meeting where a complex decision is being made, ban PowerPoint. Ask for a simple, 1-page narrative memo to be distributed at the start. Sit in silence and read it. See how it changes the quality of the conversation? And third, the next time something goes wrong, don't just fix the immediate problem. Ask why 5 times. Dig until you find the true root cause. Then, don't just promise to try harder next time. Ask yourself, what mechanism can we build to make sure this mistake never happens again? That was a summary of Working Backwards by Colin Breyer and Bill Carr. We've covered the core framework and some of the incredible stories today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only scratch the surface. The real power of this book is in the details, the nuanced examples, the behind-the-scenes debates, the deep dives into how these processes actually feel in practice. This summary is designed to give you a map, to show you if this is a journey worth taking. If any of the ideas we've discussed today, customer obsession, long-term thinking, building mechanisms, have sparked something in you, then I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning Amazon secrets, it's about learning a new way to think, a new way to build, and a new way to lead. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that subscribe button and give this a thumbs up. It tells us that we're on the right path, and it ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another world-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.